Hello guys, Hot Potato Gaming here. Today I wanted to give you an overall guide on how to play the STB-2 in the Japanese tech tree. Before I do so though, allow me to give some historical insight behind this groundbreaking new prototype and subsequent first production model. The Type 61, Japan's first MBT, was just starting to roll off the assembly lines as the rest of the world was starting to introduce tanks of a new era, including the Leopard and the Challenger tank families, thus making even the brand new Type 61 obsolete. Seeing this issue, the Japanese government turned to Mitsubishi to come up with a tank that was up to the standards of this new generation of MBT, which led to the prototype of the tank, the STB-1, to be ready in the 1960s. The production version of this design was then called the Type 74, which was accepted in, you guessed it, 1974, which is still in use by the JSDF to this day. This STB-2 and Type 74 appear folded together in rank 5 of the Japanese ground tree. As you can see, it comes right after the M47, which is a very different tank from the prior two. Some notable and key features of this MBT are its hydro-pneumatic suspension. It is armed with a stabilized 105mm gun that could fire either an APDS or HESH shell, and it is fairly maneuverable, with the best comparison being the Leopard 1, which is at the same BR. The hydro-pneumatic suspension is the key strength of this tank, as by itself, the 105mm gun only has elevation angles of -6 to 9 degrees, but it is compensated for because of the suspension, which can lean forward, backward, side to side, as well as to raise and lower the entirety of the hull. Some quick reminders: as this feature is engine powered, it will not adjust your suspension if you are currently moving or if your engine is knocked out or off. Some keys that I use to adjust the suspension are Control and WASD for leaning forward, backward, left, and right. Control and Q and E to raise and lower the suspension, as well as Control 1 to reset the suspension to its default setting, which is useful as when your suspension is in an adjusted position, it can lead to a bumpier ride, which may not be optimal. When talking about the armament of this vehicle, the APDS is not a record-breaking shell. However, it is still enough to handle most enemies it faces up front, and definitely from the side. Just remember though, this shell does get finicky with weird angles, and I have had issues with the upper front hulls of the M48s as well as the IS-3 and T-10Ms. The mobility is above average for most MBTs, but don't expect to cap too many points uncontested, as the SPAAs and tank destroyers would beat you to it more often than not. Finally, the armor is definitely not something to write home about, as the only spot you might get lucky enough to bounce main caliber shells is the ends of the frontal turret, but otherwise, most 30s can pen your upper front plate, so just stay out of the main brawling, please. The ideal ammo count is usually 16, but because it would only be held on the left side of the tank, but do as you want because usually a shot generally in that area is a one shot anyway. Gameplay-wise, you could definitely see this thing excels at what it was designed for, which was to shoot and scoot in mountainous tank combat. This is the trendsetter for the rest of the Japanese MBTs. The strategy which I find most effective in this tank is moving from hill to hill, peeking up for short periods of time to take shots, but to mostly stay under cover. I also try to make sure I maximize the utility of my adjustable suspension, as it gives a huge advantage in this type of tank combat. When it comes to not-so-terrain-like maps like the cities, still play the shoot-and-scoot sniper, as this tank is not made for brawling, with its terrible reverse gear. I find in this setting, a good thing to do is not to make any offensive pushes yourself, and just side-sniping enemies that are further from the front lines, which makes a great gameplay for this type of map. Not so ironically, this tank fares really well in the Japan map in-game, as it can utilize the rocky hill cover to its maximum advantage and snipe enemies from afar, which, as I said, was what this thing was made for. Lineup-wise, there can definitely be more to be desired in this department, as your best 8-3 lineup would have the STB-2, Type 74, as well as the Type 87, which is your run-of-the-mill SPA of that battle rating, so don't expect much from it. Now, a couple of lower BR tanks that I suggest you supplement this lineup with are the Type 87 RCVP and the Type 99 Tank Destroyer for auxiliary roles. The Type 87 is really exceptional when it comes to scouting targets, capturing zones, and destroying lightly armored targets like the BMPs, which are so common at that battle rating. As well as that, with the Type 87 RCV/P, you are definitely able to fill that frontline kind of gameplay. The Type 99, on the other hand, is definitely more of a support howitzer that stays in the back and lobs HE over the hills, and you could just watch it destroy enemies from medium to long range, which complements the Japanese playstyle really well. This howitzer, however, is in fact capable of doing catastrophic damage at close range and should never be underestimated in that capacity. Just remember though, when you are doing this, 50 cals really hurt this vehicle, so be careful. In the aircraft perspective, if you wish to have an aircraft, you do have a couple options, being the Sabres, which will bring you up to 8.7 and 9.0, which might bring you into a bit of a struggle situation in terms of BR. The Kika and R2Y2 family at 7.0 and 8.0 respectively, which do carry an 800 kilogram bomb, which is more than adequate to deal with anything it faces. Or the Key 200, which I do not recommend because of its lack of fuel, but otherwise is a great fighter. So that's all. Hope you find this video helpful. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
Let's go. But, here we go now. Batman scoop on the mic, mixing the